Hey guys, Franco here. I wanted to share an experience I had recently when I was working on my long-term project. I ran into a problem that I think everyone, hits every now and then. It's something that you think you can get past, you think you've gone rid of, or you've outgrown, and then it just sort of like comes back, and it just kind of keeps haunting you throughout your life. And I'm talking about perfectionism. For those that are new to the channel, I've been working on a game called Block Miner for about 2.5 years. So a couple of weeks ago, I came to the conclusion that the code for Block Miner was just no longer viable. There were a lot of things in there that were meant more for just kind of prototyping the game. You know, recently, because I'm trying to move more into like the production phase of development, the code was just causing me so many headaches, and I felt like I had to actually rewrite some of it. I had an idea of where I wanted to make improvements, but I realized that changing one thing would force me to make other changes, and it became pretty overwhelming. Honestly, it felt defeating because I was like, well, now I have to basically like rewrite my entire game. In situations like these, when there's a bunch of problems ahead of you and you just don't know what to do and you're feeling overwhelmed, I always remembered the lessons I learned from Anne Lamott's book Bird by Bird, where she talks about approaching big, scary problems in smaller, easy-to-do steps. Adam Savage also says a similar thing in his book Every Tool's a Hammer, but he does advise creating a list where you can have a visual representation of the big chunks of work and the smaller chunks that make up the big chunks. So I've been using the lessons that I learned from these books throughout the development of Block Miner. The situation was no different. I made my list of things that I needed to change, and then I basically just started planning out my approach to each task. And that's where I ran into my second problem. When I was planning my approach for each task, I got it into my head that this new code had to surpass the existing one. I was essentially competing with myself from like 2 years ago. And that mindset only made me feel that if my plan on paper or in my head was not like perfect, then it just wasn't worth acting on. So I obsessed over every detail during the planning phase. And when I couldn't find a perfect solution within myself, I would, start looking elsewhere. I would search online. I try to find solutions that other people came to, and yeah, I did this for about 2 to 3 weeks. And it was so disappointing because I forgot such an important lesson. You can plan all you want, but when you eventually act out that plan, you're gonna find things that you didn't account for, and ultimately just changing your approach, right? So I was spending all this time just waiting for the perfect solution to come to me, when all I had to do was just act out the plan that I had, regardless of its quality, run into the problems with it, reevaluate, and then just try again. Even when I started acting on my plans, I still couldn't help but think that the path I chose had to be the right one. It had to be the perfect one. Even though the more appropriate solution was just staring me right in the face, I wanted to choose the solution that made me look good, basically. I felt like if I chose the more appropriate solution, it was just taking the easy way out, and I wasn't smart or anything like that. What I'm trying to say is, do not feel defeated by the shortcuts you have to take when working on your projects. Do whatever works for your projects. And that leads me to the next point. When you start a new project, I'm sure that you come at it with a lot of enthusiasm and curiosity, and you're just so thrilled to be able to bring one of your ideas to life. And when it comes to long-term projects, it's hard to maintain that enthusiasm throughout the project's development. The amount of work you have to get done is like immeasurable, and it can be a while before you know where the finish line is, and it might be closer than you expected or further than you expected. So when you're working on your projects, you need to do everything in your power to enjoy the process of making your projects. do not lose the enthusiasm that you started your project with. I think without that, you will eventually just give up. And this ties back to the whole perfectionism thing, because I felt like if I wasn't reaching a certain expectation that I set for myself, then the project just wasn't worth pursuing. It just kind of got me in the cycle of never really able to complete anything that I started, because I was just so obsessed with perfection. Luckily for me, in the case of Block Miner, my self-awareness and just reaching out to people about the situation is what got me out of this, out of this cycle of perfectionism and stuff. Now I'm back at it. I'm making progress on Block Miner, but I think what's most important is that I actually enjoy working on Block Miner now. And I lost that a couple of weeks ago. I had a hard time waking up early in the mornings to work on it before I went into work. It was a struggle. You know, I'm making this video to just remind you all, and also just as a reminder to myself, perfectionism exists, and it will keep coming back throughout your life. Even though, you know, you've gone years without it, without its presence, it can always come back. Funny enough, it actually returned during the filming of this video. This is actually my sixth or seventh attempt at recording this video. I believed that I could lecture about perfectionism without having any sort of script or structure, and after several takes, I realized that I'm just not that kind of person. So I wrote a script, which is right here. I think if I didn't have that, I don't think I would have ever finished this video. So anyway, I hope this video helped someone. And and if it did, please leave a comment down below. And yeah, thank you, and good luck with your projects.